What up, my MXM dudes? We got us a little bit of that Denver, Colorado track review here for RF 2022. My dudes, Cincy boy quad, bro. You can quad in that rhythm, but just to be very clear here, none of these bigger rhythms on this track are actually faster. There's also another one right here that is just simply not faster at all than going super far inside and hitting the smaller 250 line. Same case in the very first corner, very first rhythm section on this track. It's just better to go way up the inside and just triple in. Even though you can hit a bigger line, it is not faster on any part of this track right here. And I really scratch my head when track makers end up making tracks like that, where it's like, I mean, yeah, there's bigger lines that you could potentially hit everywhere on the rhythm sections, but they're just not faster. And it's like, it's not even close. It's not even close to being faster, you know? Especially if you put enough time into this game, qualifying, pro racing, all that shit. You can tell right away if just going way up the inside and hitting some small-ass little double in or on a tabletop, you know, some really small jump, you can tell right away if the amount of time going inside is just going to, without a doubt, save you more time, regardless of how much smaller of a rhythm versus going outside, right? Versus having to go outside to hit some bigger rhythm. And I think this sort of track right here, I really didn't like this one as much as the past like 4 or 5 that they've made. I feel like this one's going right back into all of that a little bit too small of scaling. Feels more like you're on an arena cross style scaling than a full-blown Supercross level track. Going back into all those bullshit issues that you get with the one-to-one scaling type shit. The whoops are okay on this track. I mean, I don't think these are quite as easy as some of the ones they had at the very beginning of the year. But, I mean, as far as the rhythm sections and just the overall difficulty, it literally feels like a beginner or an amateur could get around this track with no problem at all. Which basically, in a nutshell, equals you're not going to be able to separate yourself. Like a really fast dude in this game is just not going to be able to separate himself as much on something like this as he would on the past like 4 or 5 tracks that they've made. You see what I'm saying? Again, even though you can hit the quad in the first rhythm, it's not worth it. Nobody's going to hit that shit in the race because it's just faster to go up the inside. And typically, what makes something happen that way is when your jumps are not tall enough, they're not quite peaked out enough, they don't have that height to them, where if you hit a smaller rhythm, it'll slow you down more. You see what I'm saying? Like, you've got to have a tall enough of jumps through a rhythm section for it to even be worth going to the outside in the corner before to hit a bigger rhythm. But when they've got these smaller, more one-to-one scaling style jump height to the rhythm section jumps, it's almost always faster to just hug the far inside of the tough blocks and hit the inside smaller 250 line in every single rhythm. And this track has a lot of that feeling where you're just squaring up every single corner, you're cutting the corners, you're turning the bike sharper in the corners. You know what I'm saying? This track definitely has that feeling of like, it's almost faster to go slower. I don't see how a 450 would be all that much faster than a 250 on this track, like at all. Literally at all. Everything you can hit, everything that would be worth hitting on a 450 would be the same thing you would hit on a 250 on this track. This one just is not stacking up, like I've been telling you boys, to that overall difficulty level to be considered a full-blown pro level Supercross track on MX Simulator in 2022. This just ain't really it, bro. This is more of an amateur 250 level skill kind of track right here. That's just what it is. I mean, the berms are pretty good, or they're decent sized. I'm not going to say they're amazing, but like these two berms right here are at least decent sized. The whoops are okay, but really every other aspect of the track just has that feeling of like easier than it should be for a full-blown pro level track. And if you want any sort of question to that, like just go back and ride on some of the last 5 rounds that they've made in this game. And I know a lot of you guys have left comments on my videos talking about like you could tell the last 4 or 5 tracks had a lot more skill gap because you couldn't even get within like 5 seconds of the pro lap times. Whereas like some of the earlier tracks this year, you could get like 2 seconds off of the fast pro lap times, right? So it's pretty obvious what I've been saying about this whole skill gap thing to these tracks and scaling and all this stuff this whole year. And it is a little bit disappointing to see them take a bit of a step back with this one. I just don't think this one's... I mean, I don't think it's as bad as some of their first tracks they were making, but it's closer, definitely closer to that than the last like 5 or 6 rounds that they've made. This is pretty much the worst one I would say that they've made since Daytona, for sure. And you got to understand, it's not about like, oh, well, they made a track that's fun and rideable and like somebody's random fun custom Supercross track. And some of you amateur boys and some of you boys don't really play this game all that much. It's not about if you're having fun on the track, okay? That's not even what it's about. Yeah, an amateur and a beginner, anybody that's put like less than 2,000 hours into this game would probably have a blast on this track right here. But that's not the point. The point is you've got to have a track that is difficult enough to be considered a full-blown pro level difficulty to where the people that's put 5,000 plus hours into this game can actually properly separate themselves in the pro races in the game. That's the whole point of it. It's not about just making the track fun or rideable or like you would with a random custom track. That's not even what it's about, dudes. You got to really sit down and realize that. When I say this track is not as good, I'm not just saying like comparing it to a random custom track good. I'm talking like being that actual pro level difficulty, aka the most important aspect to a RF pro track in this game. The problem is all of the amateurs in this game race on the exact same track as the pros do, so then they're going to give all that input in just like the pros would give input in, but they're going to say that nothing's really wrong with the track like this. This is an amateur track. That's the whole point. This is more of an amateur track, right? Whereas if you go to the Daytona or even the Atlanta track, of course, those are both speedway tracks, but even the ones like some of the past 5 or 6 rounds they've made were just more skill gap than this. Way more skill gap. The bigger lines were actually worth hitting. They were actually faster. The whoops were bigger. This does still have a little bit of that early of the year, sandier, loamier feel. I don't think it's quite as bad, but it is similar to that. The triple is decent distanced, I suppose, but this track is really narrow compared to even just the past like 5 or... I know at the beginning of the year they were really wide, and they started narrowing it down to like a 2017 style width. That's what I feel like they had in the past like 6 rounds. This one, especially in some of these really tight corners, this is literally getting to like arena cross level width and scaling. I mean, just shit. Look how fucking narrow and tight this corner is. Like, that's an arena cross corner on MX Sim. And it's like a 1-to-1 scaling Supercross corner. You see the difference? Boy, you just have to put some time into this shit to know what I'm talking about. But nonetheless, don't know what RF's doing on this one, but alrighty then. Even this rhythm through here, I mean, how the fuck are you going to pop off the bike or wreck on any of this shit? This first rhythm and this first... You're not going to go for the big rhythm, so you're just going to go triple, double, or maybe triple, quad, single, but that's pretty slow. but like you can see how small these jumps are. And like I say, with that little bit of loamy feeling, you're not going to pop off. So this track doesn't really have that danger feeling to it, or that, oh shit, bro, I'm on a full-blown pro-level Supercross track in the game. Woo! It just doesn't have that excitement to it. Doesn't have that feeling to it. So for me personally, I can only ride like fucking 10 laps on a track like this, and I'm just completely done with it. But either way, big dogs, that's about it for this one. Hopefully RF goes back to more of the real pro level track design instead of this weird amateur pro hybrid loam style design of a track. I just don't know where this shit comes from, you know? They didn't do that back in 2017 or any time previous to that, and I just don't understand it, you know? It's like this track is like, it's just not what I think of as 2022 level, pro level difficulty skill gap on a Supercross track in this game, right? So either way, big dogs, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. See you boys on that next one. Later, dudes.